A few years ago, I was on a trip to Manhattan Island. Being the idiot I am, I left my cash and some of my luggage in a taxi. I was stranded in the middle of New York and I needed to find a hotel quickly. Luckily, there was one right next to where I was. It had a neon sign that said, "The Sorcier Hotel." As I approached it, I immediately knew that something was off. The hotel was a dingy tourist trap. Everything had some yellowish dirt on it and the walls looked like they hadn't been painted in years. I came up to the receptionist and asked for a room. I was repulsed by his strange smile. He gave me some keys and asked for my credit card. When I gave it to him, he swiped it and handed it back to me. I tried pulling it from his hand, but he wouldn't let go. I had to use a good amount of force to grab it back. "I'm sorry, this is my first day," is what he said. He asked, "Can I carry your luggage?" I didn't say anything, but he grabbed it anyways. He was odd, but he wasn't nearly as strange as the rest of the place. I went to use the elevator, but there was none. I sighed and went up the stairs. When I went to put my hand on the handrail, I noticed that it was coated in some sort of translucent goop. When I finally got to my door, I opened it and noticed that there was a man in my room. I asked, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm just checking your room, sir," and left. While he was leaving, I got a detailed glimpse of his facial features. He was a pale man with an almost cartoonishly long face. Unlike the rest of the employees who were smiling, he had a nonchalant expression. I would say that he looked almost depressed. I jumped onto my bed and noticed that my luggage was already in my room. I thought that this was strange as I didn't see the receptionist come up the stairs with me. At this point, I wanted to leave. I thought, just one night. When I put my head on my pillow, I noticed that something was under it. I looked, and it was a dead rat. I was disgusted. I called room service and told them about it. They cleaned it up and I asked where it came from. A man with a large smile on his face said, "Accidents happen. We are sorry," and left. I would have left, but it was 2 a.m. and I didn't have the energy. I was thinking, this day can't get any worse. It did. I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. This place was just too weird. At about 3 a.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw that pale man who was in my room earlier. I opened the door and he said to me, "Hello, I am the owner, Gustavo. I've heard that you found a dead rat under your pillow?" I replied, "Yes." "What about it?" He told me, "I'd like to give you some compensation. How about a night for free?" I was about to say something when he left abruptly. What was wrong with these stupid people? While I was trying to sleep, I could hear fighting from the other room. It sounded like 2 people were trying to kill each other. I could hear loud sounds of somebody being slammed against a wall. After a few minutes of this, I heard intense screaming. I didn't care how tired I was going to leave now. As I went to the door, I saw something through the peephole. It kind of looked like a human, but with 10 fingers on each hand, rough and colorless skin, and purely white eyes. Its mouth was wide open, exposing its sharp teeth that were covered in blood. I stumbled back and hid under my sheets. That's all I could do at this point. At around 6 a.m., I was going to leave this place no matter what. I got out of bed, opened my door, and bolted out. I was running down the stairs when I tripped. Gustavo helped me up and said, "Leaving so soon? You have another night for free." I escaped his grip and ran to the main lobby. There were at least 50 employees in here and they were all standing in a circle. When I came in, they all looked at me with their freaky smiles. At the same time, they all said, "Leaving so soon? You have another night for free." They chanted this over and over while I ran out the door. When I got outside, I felt a sense of relief. I called the police and told them what had happened. They went to check the hotel, but it was gone. In its place was an old apartment building that hadn't been used in decades. If anybody has experience with the Sorcier Hotel, please tell me. We need to uncover this mystery. You need to be careful around hotel people. My father warned my little brother Caden and I, some of them are strangers and others are just strange. They don't all want what's best for you, and just because they smile doesn't mean that they're your friend. Hey, are you kids even listening to me? We weren't. Caden and I pressed our faces against the glass wall of the elevator, watching the lobby disappear below. It was our first time staying in a big hotel like this, but it wouldn't be the last, and only years later would I understand the horrific reason why. My mother had always shown signs of borderline personality disorder, but recently she'd become a danger to herself and to us. My father, a traveling consultant, was terrified that one day he'd come home to find that she'd gone on a 40 drinking binge and forgotten to feed us, or that she'd drowned my younger brother Caden in the bathtub during a fit of rage. He faced the agonizing choice of potentially losing us in a custody battle or taking us with him on his travels. At first, it felt like a vacation. We swam in the hyperchlorinated pool until we were exhausted. We completed the coursework our school sent us in big puffy armchairs beside tinkling fountains and fake plants. At night we sipped vending machine ginger ale while we surfed through hundreds of channels. When Caden and I slipped off to sleep beneath our starched white sheets, the last sight we saw was usually our father, still hard at work in the soft glow of the hotel desk lamp, staring at his laptop with a hand on his chin. Unsurprisingly, the routine got old fast. Once we'd played with all the equipment in the exercise room, once we'd snuck through the kitchens and laundries in the concrete guts of the hotel, there was very little to keep us entertained. That was how we met them. The hotel people. We mostly played on the second level of the building, which only held conference rooms, the breakfast area, a seating area, and storage. Since no conferences were in session, we pretty much had the place to ourselves, but it was more than a little creepy. The dim light that came through the blinds. The silent rows of chairs lined up to face a plastic stage. The vast empty rooms. The stuffy air that smelled of dust and cleaning supplies. I was running down a hallway of closed doors looking for Caden when the first one appeared. "Pardon me, but what are you doing?" a voice behind me asked. I gasped and spun around. The speaker stood just a few feet away, although I couldn't figure out how they managed to just appear in an empty hallway. Although they were about my height, I was 11 and short for my age, they didn't feel like another kid on vacation. They were too still, whoever they were, and when I looked at them out of the corner of my eye, they didn't look like a child at all. Just playing a game with my brother," I stammered. "Oh, a game. I love games," their eyes lit up. "Tell me about it." "Well, it's basically like a mix between hide and seek and tag. It would be ever so thrilling to play with you." There was something hungry about the way they smiled. I hadn't heard any footsteps of opening doors, but two more short figures stood behind the first, backlit by the shaded windows. I wondered if these were the hotel people my father had warned me about. I backed away. "My dad's waiting for me," I replied quickly, "and maybe another time." They knew that I was lying, and their laughter was like the rustle of insects' wings. I yelled for Caden, fearing the worst. What if they found him first? Caden was only 8, and he trusted everybody. "Never fear, asterisk. The voice from behind me suddenly became so loud it seemed to shake the hallway. "We'll be waiting." I was running as hard as I could down the carpeted corridor, but it only seemed to get longer. I threw open doors left and right. An empty ballroom filled with ghost-like cloth-covered tables. A janitor's closet. Another conference room. Something small and dark moved beneath the plastic chairs. "Caden," I screeched. For a second, the shadowy shape hesitated. "It's Dad, we gotta go." My little brother moved uncertainly into the light of the open doorway, shielding his eyes against its brightness. "There's Dee's key." I spun around. The hallway was empty. "What's your problem?" Caden whined. "There's nobody here." "You're just mad 'cause you couldn't find me, huh? You ruined the game." Caden pretended to be mad, but I could tell by a red burn on his cheek that he'd fallen asleep in his hiding spot. I checked my plastic watch. It was almost 6 o'clock. "Come on, Caden," I sighed. "We gotta go get ready for dinner." The money that companies gave my father for dinner was enough to feed the 3 of us lunch and dinner if we kept it cheap. In the Christmas-like glow of a gas station taco truck with chorizo and onion dribbling down my chin, what I'd seen in the hotel felt like a dream. Some instinct warned me against telling my father about the strange encounter. What if he got worried and kept us locked up in the room all day? At 11 years old, I couldn't imagine a worse fate. Nevertheless, I breathed a sigh of relief when he told us that tomorrow we'd be on our way to a new city and a new hotel. But the nightmare was just beginning. Look, before I get into what happened, I just want to preface this by saying I know how mundane the title sounds, okay? I know all hotel workers claim their place of work is haunted, but this one was different. If it didn't sound so stupid, I'd say the place was possessed, or even a demon itself, somehow taking on the form of a building. I started working there the summer I finished school. I'd gotten my A-level results, and I have to admit, I hadn't put in enough work for them. I'd skipped 2 C's and A.D. barely passes and not good enough to get into any of the universities I'd applied for. My mom was disappointed in me, surprise, surprise, and gave me 2 options: try and get a uni place through clearing, or get a job and pay her rent until I could afford to move out. Obviously, I picked the latter. The hotel was called Grimhale and was less than an hour's drive from home. I was interviewed by a short balding man with tired eyes and a weirdly pink scalp, as if his hair had been pulled and not fallen out naturally. He introduced himself as Ned and seemed eager for me to start. I'd been a little suspicious of this at first, in case the desperation for staff was something I should be concerned about. God, I wished I'd listened to my gut. Grimhale itself was less of an eyesore than you'd expect. It had 5 floors, with 24 rooms on each, splitting off of snaking corridors, carpeted and wallpapered in fading shades of red and brown. Each room was basic: double bed, ensuite bathroom, closet, desk, heater, and full-length mirror. Strangely, none of the rooms seemed to have windows, despite the fact many of them had external walls, and the building itself appeared to have windows from the outside. At first, the experiences were minor, the front desk phone would ring, and when I answer, no one would be on the other end. Requests would come in from rooms for extra towels or to make a complaint about something not working, only for the room to be empty when I get there. Freshly replaced light bulbs would burst within hours. Random objects would seemingly disappear and then reappear again in the most obvious of places. Of course, I was nervous to start with, caught off guard by these strange happenings. Being the youngest and newest staff member, I was hesitant to mention anything to any of my coworkers in case they laughed at me or brushed me off as some anxious kid. It wasn't until my 3rd month on the job that things began to ramp up a little. It was past 2 a.m. and I had been sat in the back office with the door open in case anyone came to the front desk when an animalistic shriek rang out through the lobby. I sat bolt upright in my chair, needle-like prickles running down my spine. For a moment, I wasn't sure what to do. I knew I should check the lobby, but the dread creeping over me told me I should hide and definitely not go investigate. Choosing my job duties over my fear, I crept out of the office and into the reception area. Everything was as still and quiet as it should be. Part of me desperately wanted to slip back into the room behind me and lock the door, but instead I picked up my flashlight and skeleton keys and started making rounds through each floor, poking my head into every unoccupied room and darkened stairwell. I found nothing. After that, I couldn't seem to go a week without hearing the scream during a night shift. Oftentimes, when I worked a morning shift, guests would come by the reception on their way to breakfast and complain about seeing someone in their room the night before. They usually described a dark figure with a slim build standing in their room, blocking the door or looming over them before fading into nothing. These sightings only seemed to happen on floors 2 and 4, most frequently in rooms 2, 7, 15, 19, 21, and 23, and more often than not, with women. Every time I was sent to clean one of these rooms, I would try to wrangle someone else into coming with me, not because I was lazy, but because I hated being in those rooms alone. But normally, there weren't enough workers on shift to allow 2 people to go do a single-person job. It would be fine when I'd first enter the room, but the longer I'd be in there, the seemingly heavier the atmosphere would get. I'd feel like someone was staring at me constantly, a pressure building in my head until a migraine would begin to burn behind my eyes. Plus, I could guarantee I'd lose something every time I cleaned one of those rooms. Even if I had emptied all of my personal effects before I entered, I'd leave unable to find a spray bottle or a cloth, or on one occasion, my whole belt. Of course, there were lots of smaller happenings, too, just like any haunted place. Hanging lights would swing with no breeze, doors would open by themselves, the front desk bell would ring with nobody around, clatters and bangs would emanate from the kitchen hours after it had closed for the night, an invisible something would tug sharply on my hair and clothes, as well as trip me up. Honestly, whilst it did all freak me out, I just put up with it. Yes, I was struggling to get more than 5 hours of sleep a night, and my mental state had definitely taken a toll, but for some reason the idea of quitting hadn't really crossed my mind, other than in the form of a fleeting thought. I was oddly drawn to the hotel, as if under some kind of spell or curse. Almost like I couldn't leave. The final straw, however, was when the apparitions started appearing. I don't count the shadow man on floors 2 and 4, as I never actually saw anything myself. The first one was a woman, dressed muddy gray, crying in the lobby. It had been another tiresome night shift, and my nerves already felt frayed by 3 a.m. when the sound of someone sobbing rang out through the reception area. I had rushed out to the front desk, heart pounding and desperately hoping whoever was there was okay and uninjured. Sitting in the middle of the maroon carpet was a woman in a dirty gray tracksuit. The fabric was torn at the knees, and I could clearly see blood seeping through the ragged edges. Her face was buried in her hands, her dark hair spilling like waterfalls over her trembling shoulders. I approached and tentatively touched her upper back in an attempt at comfort. I was 19 at this point, and while I like to think of myself as pretty socially competent, consoling a crying adult was still beyond me. "Ma'am, what's wrong? Has something happened?" I lowered myself and allowed my full palm to make contact with her shoulder blade. A grotesque shudder ran through her body, almost like a convulsion. She began to rise, sitting up more fully and turning towards me. Then she pulled her hands away from her face, and I recoiled in horror. It couldn't even be said she had a face anymore, really just a gaping maw where her lips should meet over her teeth, below a ripped nose and eye sockets filled with some kind of goo. The jagged teeth wrenched further apart as a scream erupted from the thing's throat, and I flinched back, shielding myself from the sight. After several agonizingly long seconds, I peeked through my fingers and found she had vanished, leaving me cowering on the old carpet alone. Once the floodgate opened to them, they never seemed to stop. That's as much as I can bear to recount for today. I know the nightmares will be back tonight, I'm sure of that. But I know some people are really into this kind of stuff, so ask away. I'll try to remember as many details as I can.